Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Art of War. By Sun Tzu. Aristotle penned The Art of War about 500 BC. Sun Tzu, one of history's greatest military strategists, jotted down a few ideas for his clients at the time. When preparing a military operation, this book provides useful knowledge. Avoiding conflict was Sun Tzu's first recommendation. It is both inefficient and harmful to a country's economic well-being. Keep an eye on the evolving stages of the conflict if it is unavoidable. If the attacker attacks, be ready and try to take the initiative. Consider the 5 constant factors when preparing: the moral code, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline. The soldiers are completely in tune with their commander thanks to the moral law. Be obedient to your superiors. The weather and time of day belong in heaven, whereas the landscape belongs on earth. He must be above suspicion, always placing the well-being of his troops before himself and demonstrating compassion to the adversary. The meat of the operation is method and discipline. Be swift and decisive when battle is necessary. Try to do as little harm as possible to the enemy's land. It is preferable if the populace does not become overly pessimistic. Keep them from becoming desperate. Men in a state of desperation can be incredibly dangerous. Taoism was an interest of Sun Tzu's. Meditation and self-conception were emphasized as key components of the religion's approach to opening up the brain's recesses. You can use your brain to imagine what you desire, and then take action to get there. See the ball, be the ball, just like in the movie Caddyshack, starring Kevin Costner. A short chapter on spies is included in the collection of beneficial advice for generals, writers, and chess players. One of the military's most powerful weapons. They won't be spotted if they sneak into a camp. In order to gather information, they approach the opponent and eavesdrop on them. Finally, Sun Tzu discusses the importance of spies in the war effort before concluding his list. Sun Wu was born in the 5th century, at the period of Confucius's life. Wu was his given name, Sun was his family name, and then he was granted the title, Zhu, in the Chinese tradition. A generation of his ancestors had devoted their lives to the development of lethal weaponry. A clan or family possessed the information at that time. Knowledge that has been passed down from father to son for generations. Taoism and his own observations would have supplemented the wisdom of his family and clan. He served as an advisor to the king of Wu, Holu, and later became Holu's military commander. This is how Sun Tzu formed his military agreements, by employing psychological tricks as well as strategic planning and diplomatic ruses. The book opens with the preparations for war being made. According to Sun Tzu, a well-executed battle strategy can mean the difference between life and death for a soldier. Moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and procedure and discipline are the 5 most important aspects to keep in mind at all times. Morality dictates that a good soldier will always follow orders, no matter how absurd they may appear. As a brave soldier, his morals would keep him from being shaken by the situation. There were no obstacles he couldn't overcome with entire confidence and vigor. Fearless. To live in heaven, one must always be aware of the time of day and the weather. What time of day is the greatest for maneuvers? What impact will the weather have on the conflict? It's getting really hot out there, right? Is the heat fatigue going to kill the soldiers? Weapons will be affected by the weather. Mild gas users, like those exposed to it during World War I, rapidly discovered the perils of fluctuating winds. If the fight is to be fought on open terrain or a tiny passage, earth means to take into mind distance, danger, and safety. This might be the difference between life and death, according to Sun Tzu. How far will your soldiers have to travel before they are forced to engage in battle? Will they be able to take a break or will they be forced to fight from a position of weakness and exhaustion? Do any of the overpasses have traps? What are the possible hiding places for the adversary? The ambush could have come from where? Are there any trees to give the opponent some cover? When attempting to tame the American wilderness, the settlers discovered that dangers lurked behind the forest's trees. Where will you hide if the combat is taking place on an open field? If you're fighting from a distance, how are you going to keep your distance? Do you know what kind of weapons you will need? There are fewer deaths on your side of the struggle when you fight the concept battle. Soldier morale suffers and manpower counts plummet when soldiers are deployed as shields, or cannon fodder, as they were known in the American Civil War. They begin to lose faith in their leaders very rapidly. The leader should embody both knowledge and bravery in equal measure. If he tells you something, do as he says. He should be stern, but also reasonable. Sincere and generous. He should be able to elicit admiration for his leadership abilities. His men blindly follow his orders. Because of this, he must not falter in his duties. As a result, a smart military leader listens to his advisors and takes their recommendations into account while making a choice in a conflict. Commanders have been known to lose their cool in the heat of battle on several occasions throughout history. General Sherman burned down homes as he marched through Georgia during the American Civil War because he lost sight of the fact that the opponent was also a human being. Women and children were the majority of those he left homeless. It's hard to see how his men could admire him when he told them to commit atrocities. On the subject of method and discipline, Sun Tzu insisted on the need of army structure. The division of the group into manageable units. The Romans worked in groups of 10. Each 10-person group had a leader, as did the 10 10-person groups and the 10 10-person groups after that. In modern armies, this distinction is made with numerous ranks, such as airman, airman first class, sergeant, and its multiple degrees, up to chief master sergeant. Afterwards, the officers assume charge as their superiors, beginning with the lieutenant and working their way up to the rank of general and beyond. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who served as President of the United States in 1953, is one of the few men in the United States to have the highest military rank of 5-star general. Another proof that the Romans had learned these lessons was the construction of numerous highways across Europe as they plotted their conquests. Because of this, the phrase "all roads lead to Rome" was coined. Historically, Roman road construction was based on the width required for a cavalry chariot to pass through, and railroad construction followed suit. When the Romans weren't fighting, they were engineers. At this period, the Romans erected Hadrian's Wall in the United Kingdom as a barrier against the Picts. Long-term stability can be achieved through careful preparation. Sun Tzu's work is structured in groups and lists because the human brain is better able to retain knowledge when it is presented in this way. According to Sun Tzu's Laying Plans chapter, he can predict the outcome of a fight by looking at just 7 factors. When it comes to morality, which king is supported by all of his troops? In the army, whose commander stands out as the most competent? 3. Which of heaven and earth's 2 halves has the most to gain from the weather and terrain? 4. Which team has the most self-control and consistently enforces its rules? What is the largest and strongest army in the world? This hasn't always determined the winner throughout history, but it has in the majority of cases. How well trained are their soldiers and officers on each side? Finally, whose side's rewards and punishments are the most consistent? Deception and all of Sun Tzu's other ideas are critical in war. It is Sun Tzu's belief that deceit is essential to victory in combat. Make the impression that you have a lesser force and are ill-equipped. Once the opposition is fooled into thinking they have won, attack with increased vigor and discipline. Take advantage of his lack of preparation by employing spies to find out if he is. On a frigid Christmas Eve in 1776, Washington crossed the Delaware River to capture British hired Hessian soldiers. Only 4 troops perished as a result of his victory. Due to Christmas festivities and underestimating the American army, the Hessians were entirely unprepared. It is Sun Tzu's second chapter in his book that focuses on the financial consequences of battle, especially if it lasts for a lengthy period of time. Similarly, the American Civil War expenses were a major factor in the Confederacy's defeat. They didn't anticipate that the war would persist for a long period of time. The conflict left the Confederate States severely insolvent. Battles on Confederate turf were often waged on a tight budget. Sun Tzu claims that a successful army brings few provisions and survives solely on the bodies of its adversaries. They took animals and supplies and then burned the rest of the crops and livestock that were left. Invading forces have relied on this tactic throughout history, but it didn't work for the British during the American Revolutionary War. Consequently, Sun Tzu stresses the importance of rapidly resolving conflicts. A leader must always remember that his actions directly affect the well-being of his entire nation's citizens, as well as its sense of security. He has to be really cautious with this. Advice given in Chapter 3 by Sun Tzu is to use stratagem to attack. Unfortunately, this is the part of battle that gets the least attention. This invasion's first order of business is to leave the city intact. Which country, Iraq or Egypt? War has destroyed so much priceless art that it's impossible to keep track of it all. As is the quantity of brilliant ideas that have been lost in the heat of conflict. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. p.15. Avoiding sieges is also advised by him. In order to seize the walled city, one would have to spend a significant amount of time preparing and then finding a way to do it. In order to increase one's chances of winning in war, Sun Tzu provides an arithmetical formula. Surround the adversary with 10 of your soldiers, attack him with 5, divide our army in half if you have twice as many as the opponent. We can fight if we are on equal footing, we can avoid the enemy if we are outnumbered, and we can escape if we are completely outmatched. Knowing the right time to fight is one of the most important things you can do in order to win. Secondly, know how to deal with both powerful and weak opponents. 3. Maintain the same level of enthusiasm in all ranks. 4. Be ready and take advantage of the enemy's lack of preparation. 5. He who has a military capacity and is not hindered by the sovereign will triumph. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. For military purposes, tactical dispositions is critical reading. There's a lot of advice that's extremely Zen-like. A good warrior sets their sights on defeating the enemy and then waits for the right moment. The enemy is the one who sets the stage for their own demise. Take advantage of the opportunity when they make a mistake. To question one's own ability to win is to concede one's position as a loser. There is no evidence that lifting an autumn hair, seeing the sun and moon, or hearing thunder signals strong strength, quick sight, or quick hearing. The military method is a different way of calculating an army's size in this chapter by Sun Tzu. To begin, there must be some form of measurement taken. Second, a rough estimate of the volume. Finally, there's the matter of math. Balance the odds. Victory in 5th place. This quote explains that measuring owes its existence to earth, estimation of amount to measurement, calculation to estimation, balancing of possibilities to calculation, and triumph to the balancing of chances. It's all really Zen. Controlling a huge army is no more difficult than controlling a small one. Following commands is second nature to a well-trained unit. Command structure is familiar to a well-trained military unit. An army soldier knows where to go for help, and would never consider going above and beyond their commanding officer. If he has an issue or a query, he goes to this person first, and then his commander will pass it along. Orders are issued from above and are expected to be carried out to the letter. Every army has used signals and signs to convey battle directions throughout history. It was a bagpipe versus drums battle between Scotland and England. Rather than trumpets, the armies during the 2 world wars used radios as a means of communication. When it comes to combat, there are only 2 techniques of assault, the direct and the indirect, but when these 2 are combined, they create an unending succession of moves. In order to keep the enemy guessing, use this strategy of confusion. In order to be an effective leader, one must not be too predictable. There should be no room for the enemy to anticipate what he will do next. To win quickly, find out what your opponent's weaknesses and strengths are. The odds are in favor of the first to arrive army. In contrast, the army that is expected to arrive soon has not had a chance to rest. One can prepare, the other needs time to do so. The wisest commanders don't allow their adversaries to dictate the agenda. He's in command of the conflict. Arouse the enemy's ire and keep them on edge. Harass him when he's resting, and if he's eating, take it away from him to starve him. You can't make him leave a good camp. Spontaneous firing of weapons is a typical combat strategy. Because the enemy never knows when an attack will occur, they are unable to take a break. The Alamo was captured in 1836 using a strategy similar to this. To entice an adversary out of his defenses, launch an attack on a location where he will be compelled to defend himself. Don't tell anyone where you're meeting the adversary after you've chosen a location. It is imperative that the enemy is not given time to prepare. Being ready to be attacked puts you in a vulnerable position. A wise commander knows when and where to take command. Find out what the enemy is up to and how likely it is that their plans will come to fruition. Military strategies, like water, have the power to change their path on their own. Takes the shortest route to a destination. No 2 drops of water are exactly alike, thus it's no wonder that water is so adaptable. There are no set rules, just as there aren't in battle. A good commander is flexible and adaptable. He needs to make some adjustments to his strategy. It is the duty of a good commander to look after his troops. Ensures that they are well fed, have a comfortable place to sleep, and maintains a positive outlook on life for all involved. They must believe that their cause is right. No one wants to be the villain, everyone wants to be the hero. When preparing a strategy, it is also vital to consider the time of day the combat is called. By noonday, the soldier's spirit begins to wane, and in the evening, his thoughts are focused solely on returning to camp. Do not approach an enemy from above or from below, even if he is moving in the opposite direction. You'd be at a disadvantage with either option. Keep the enemy at bay by not making him or her desperate. Some of them may be able to escape if an opening is left. Do not disrupt the return of an army. Sun Tzu has more advice on war. 1. When in a difficult country, don't make camp. 2. In a country where high roads intersect, join hands with your ally. 3. Do not linger in dangerously isolated positions. 4. If you are hemmed in, use strategy. 5. If in a desperate situation, fight. He also lists the 5 most dangerous faults of a general. 1. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. 2. Cowardice, which leads to capture. 3. A hasty temper, which can provoke insults. 4. A delicacy of honor, which is sensitive to shame. 5. Over-solicitude for his men, which exposes him to worry and trouble. More important tidbits of advice. 1. Camp in high places, facing the sun. 2. After crossing a river, get far away from it. 3. In order to keep your forces healthy, choose dry ground. 4. The rising of birds in their flight is a sign of an ambush, as is sudden movements of animals, especially small ones. Watch nature for signs of the enemy. 5. When some men advance and some retreat, it is a lure. 6. When you see soldiers leaning on their weapons, they are starving. 7. When a group sent to fetch water drinks first, the troops are suffering from thirst. 8. When an army feeds its horses with grain and kills its cattle for food, and when the men do not hang their cooking pots the campfires, showing they will not return to their tents, you may know that they are determined to fight to the death. In order to win a battle, the use of spies is essential. Spies come in 5 varieties. 1. Local spies, inhabitants of the district. 2. Inward spies, officials of the enemy. 3. Converted spies, turning a spy of the enemy. 4. Doomed spies, giving false information to a spy of yours that has been turned to the enemy. And 5. Surviving spies, those who bring information back from the enemy's camp, after escaping. The use of spies is an essential part of every combat effort. In many cases, an army's ability to take action is influenced by the knowledge they have. Author biographies and character studies. 500 BC was the year in which Sun Tzu was born in China. In 544 BC, he was born. Sun Wu was his given name at birth. His given names are Sun Wu, derived from his mother's maiden name, Sun. Tzu is an honorific given to him later, which meant general. He descended from a long line of military strategists, including his father, Sun Tzu the Great. But rather than following the rules of the past, he went against the grain of his own generation and forged his own path. He was a Taoist who drew inspiration for his military strategy from Zen meditation. Tzu was a military historian and philosopher as well as a general. Tzu is revered in China and the rest of Asia. For countless years, men have recounted and retold the details of his military strategies. He wore basic gray monk's robes as a sign of his seriousness. For years, the Sun family was a military consulting firm. To the knowledge his predecessors had passed down to him, he would have added his own insights. Beginning in or around 512 BC, he served as an advisor to Wu King Helu. When he won, he was encouraged to compile a summary of the lessons he had learned from his successes into a book. During the Warring States period, 481 BC to 403 BC, his book was one of the most frequently read in China. Eastern China was in the midst of a continual battle between 7 different countries. When it comes to winning battles, Sun Tzu's book The Art of War is a goldmine of information. According to Sun Tzu, the ideal tactic in war is to avoid combat. To begin, seek a peaceful resolution to a dispute. Fighting is unavoidable, therefore attack first from a position of strength. A general's first priority is establishing and maintaining order among his troops. The sternness of Sun Tzu's demeanor was well known, despite his advice to avoid any outbursts of rage from military leaders. His employment interview was the subject of a legend. Sun Tzu was put to the test by the king of Wu before he was hired. 180 female harem members were to be trained as soldiers by Sun Tzu, the king's personal trainer. Having arranged them into a formation and given them the basic commands of a military drill, he appointed 2 of the king's most beloved concubines to serve as the company commander. The 2 women giggled as he told them to turn their heads to the right. This has to stop. In order to be a general, Sun Tzu advised the king that he must communicate his commands in a clear and succinct manner. The women giggled once again when he issued a command. After that, he gave the order for their deaths. So Sun Tzu responded to the king's concern by saying that he would punish the soldiers if they understood the orders but refused to follow them. An appointed general must obey orders and fulfill his assignment no matter who objects, even if that person is his own monarch. The two ladies were executed, 2 more women were elevated, and Sun Tzu's directions were followed. Sun Tzu was an exceptional military strategist. Although his book has long since been out of print, Sun Tzu was one of the greatest military strategists of all time. To this day, people still consult his book for strategy advice. In modern conflict, the lessons can be applied. While his advice helped many armies win battles, ignoring it cost them their reputation as well as victory. Many of Asia's most powerful military leaders, including Mao Zedong, have been influenced by Sun Tzu's The Art of War. It was revered by the samurai since it was said to have contributed to Japan's unity. Sun Tzu's teachings were brought to the notice of military officials during the conflicts between the United States and Asian countries. The Marine Corps Professional Reading Program has added his book to its list of recommended reads. They are still relevant today because of Sun Tzu's brilliant strategy. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.